Poor old Maximilian then got abandoned, and without European help, Maximilian was hopelessly outnumbered. He fled to Querétaro with a handful of supporters who were still loyal, knowing perfectly well what the outcome of his battle with Juarez, the leader of the Republicans, would be. So Maximilian loaded onto wagons all of his treasure, American, Spanish, and Austrian gold and silver, and he headed for Galveston in Texas. And the plan was apparently to ship it out to Austria into the safekeeping of his wife, Carlotta, whom he'd already sent to safety. And Texas in 1867 was wild and dangerous. And it was no place to try to take treasure. And some 15 or 20 loyal Maximilianos were all he had to protect it. Now, when they got somewhere between Castle Gap and the Horsehead Crossing on the Pecos River, some former Confederates attacked them, and the Mexicans who were carrying the treasure, his Maximilianos, his loyal supporters, only about 20 of them, were just massacred. Now, there was so much treasure that the guys who'd captured it couldn't take it all, so they buried it somewhere near that killing ground, and they burnt the wagons and they burnt the bodies of the Maximilianos. Their plan was to return for it later. Now, the leader of that group was a guy named Bill Murdoch, and he became ill, and the other guys abandoned him and pressed on towards Fort Concho, where they ran into an Apache war party, and that was the end of them. So the only man who now knows or knew where the treasure was hidden that had been taken from Maximilian was this guy, Bill Murdoch. He was picked up by the authorities and was dying in jail in Denton, in Texas, and he managed to tell the doctor who was trying to save him without success that he knew where Maximilian's buried treasure was, and he even managed to draw a rough sketch map of the location. And then he died. Now, Dr. Black called on another friend of his, and they went looking all around Castle Gap. They've never found it. So Maximilian's treasure is somewhere between the Pecos River and Castle Gap, and it is still of enormous value when you think there was so much of it that they couldn't carry it all. It's, just wonder what that would be worth in today's money. Now, there's another one I'm looking for us here, and this one deals with, as soon as I can get over, yeah, right. We've got a story here about some very mysterious American treasure that came across with a guy here. Let me just get this piece clear in front of me, and we've got here an unsolved, unfinished treasure hunting mystery was reported from a cemetery. Now, this is as south as Montevideo in Uruguay on the Atlantic coast of South America. And one perspective of the story begins with a heroic naval officer, a guy called Commander Valdez. Now, he went down with his ship during World War II. He had a friend who was a priest. This one didn't become a pirate. He was just an ordinary priest. And he was Father Pedro de Catala. He died in 1945. But Father de Catala had told Commander Valdez that there was a secret treasure, a hoard of gold and gems worth millions. And he said it was hidden in a secret chamber that could be accessed by a tunnel deep below one of the Montevideo cemeteries. And that was all that Father de Catala had actually said about it. Now, before the Captain Commodore Valdez, went on his last voyage, it was almost as if he had a premonition that he wasn't going to make it back. And he told his wife what the old priest had said. Now, the second perspective on this hidden treasure comes from the Masilotti family, and it refers to the cemetery in question as being Cementerio Central in Montevideo. And the spot at which the team, Clara Maserati's team, began to dig was close to the Pantheon Nacional, which honored Uruguay's heroes. The entrance to some mysterious secret tunnels was duly discovered, and those tunnels dated back at least to the early years of the 19th century. And they were believed to be the ones that the priest had referred to. And so somewhere under that cemetery in Montevideo, there's this enormous amount of treasure that's been waiting down there for a long, long time. And so these, I'm going through this treasure chapter on the Americas looking for something closer to you.
Oh, those are great stories there. Now here's another story, and this one was the one that perhaps I have more of a scientific mind. So when we get into the paranormal, I'm always looking for a scientific type answer. And this
Absolutely.
is why I love this story so much that you told. It was about moving coffins.
Oh, this is absolutely fabulous, Steve. I'd love to share this one with you and the listeners, because I was actually over there, and this is in Barbados. There's a wonderful little fishing port called Oistins, and if any of the friends who are listening have had a holiday on Barbados, they'll know it well, because the St. Oistins fish market is just terrific if you like fresh fish. And just above it is the parish of Christchurch, which is about 150 feet above sea level. Now, in this parish there is a tomb, and as I said, the BBC sent me over with Patricia to make a documentary, and we've actually stood in this mysterious tomb where the coffins once moved, microphone in hand, recording a documentary. So I can really talk about this one firsthand. And the history of it was that round about 1809, the family who owned the tomb were the Chase Elliott's, hyphenated name, the Chase Elliott Vault. And it's only 20, 30 yards from the main door of the church, and it's at a good 150 feet above sea level. When you get off the boat at Oistins Fish Market and climb up the hill, you're pretty well, in the cemetery there, just outside the big church of Christchurch. Now, in 1809, when another member of the Chase Elliott family was laid to rest in the tomb, and again, if we can describe the actual physical layout of this for our listeners, you go down a flight of steps, and there's something like 14 steps, which start at ground level, and the tomb itself has a top which comes up just above the surface of the cemetery at that point. So it's maybe 18 inches, 2 feet above the ground, and the rest of it is way below the ground, and you approach it by descending this flight of steps. The entry to the steps which lead down into the vault door is closed, or it was closed then, with a big slab of blue Devonshire marble, about 6 foot by 4 foot, and it takes 4 men to lift it. It's really heavy. You need a man at each corner to shift it. And the burial party had moved the Devonshire marble slab, and they were about to take the next dead member of the Chase Elliott's down into the vault, when they found that the other coffins had moved quite a long way. Well, everybody was very disturbed by this. They didn't know if it was vandalism or whether there was something supernatural involved. And they put all the coffins back in place. They laid the big one. And these were big tropical coffins to withstand the rigors of the climate there in Barbados. So they weighed probably a ton each. So you need 8 men, maybe more, to shift one of these things.
And plus you have the marble slab protecting it.
Yes, and there's the marble slab over the top, which again would require more than one man to get that thing out.
Yeah, this isn't a kid playing a prank.
Yeah. So, a few more months pass, another member of the family dies, down they go again, and once more the coffins are all over the place. Months pass, happens again, and on about 6 different occasions at, so we say, monthly, yearly intervals, every time a member of the Chase Elliott family passes over, all the previous interments are found to have moved, with one exception. There was one wooden coffin which didn't move. It was the lead coffin. When we're coming back to your idea, Steve, of looking for natural scientific forces, something seemed able, if we're looking for a natural force, to move lead-cased coffins, but it didn't affect wood. Now, the story by this time, early 19th century, had got all over Barbados, and people were really getting disturbed and worried. They were talking about voodoo, and they were talking about evil spirits, and, you know, the kind of things that they would put forward as explanation.
Yeah.
And the governor, who was a very interesting man and who makes this story so interesting, was a guy called Lord Combermere. Now, he had, before being rewarded with the governorship of Barbados, he had been one of the Duke of Wellington's cavalry commanders in the war against Napoleon, and he had fought all through the Peninsular War as that part of the campaign, and he'd done it very successfully. So here's a man with a background of courage, and he was a high-ranking officer, so he was, you know, a pretty intelligent bloke who knew about campaigning and strategy and tactics. And now he's been, as it were, pensioned off with the governorship of Barbados, but underneath he's a cavalry officer. And he decided he's going to have something done about this. So he goes to see the vicar of Christchurch, who was there then, who was Father Alderson, and he said, look, next time somebody dies, I want to seal this tomb. And he was very, very thorough. When the next of the Chase Elliots was laid to rest in the tomb, Combermere took charge, and he sanded the floor. He had every part of the tomb very carefully checked for secret entrance or for loose stones that somebody could have got in. It was built of big coral stone blocks, and each of them was tested. So the floor was covered in coral sand, and then he put this big blue Devonshire marble slab flat on the top, cemented it in place, and called on, well, if you and I had been citizens of Barbados at the time, he might have said, okay, Lionel, Steve, will you put your marks on here, please, or put your signet ring into the wet cement so that nobody could open that cement without us knowing that our seals had been broken. He made it as secure as was reasonably possible. Then, because cavalry commanders have many virtues, but patience isn't one of them, he couldn't wait for the next Chase Elliott to die, and they all became disconcertingly healthy.
Yeah.
And finally, Combermere couldn't wait any longer. And he goes to the vicar and he says, Father Alderson, it's 3 months have passed. I can't wait any longer. I've got to find out what's happening. And so the party arrives and they break open the seals. They check the seals. The seals were unbroken, so nobody had lifted the slab.